The day goes by that we're not fascinated about things going on in America. Donald Trump certainly keeps us on our toes, and he's certainly keeping the markets on their toes as well, because apparently investors are now rattled after the president called the central banker too late and wrong and demanded immediate interest rate cuts. Let's speak to Erol Morkoç. He's a spokesman for Republicans overseas. Erol, great to have you on the programme. Donald Trump. The tariffs have come about, the markets are upset, kind of understandably, but the market's always fairly politically motivated, I think, as well. American equities fell sharply, the dollar weakened as investors are digesting all of the rising uncertainty. Do you still think your man's doing the right thing?
Absolutely, and these are all the sort of symptoms of a trade war you have to expect. When you look at the market, you have to realize that 88% of Americans don't own a relevant amount of stocks. So the transnational equity holders who are being impacted by this volatility are a very small portion of the American, let's say, electorate. As well, he won the working class vote. And we made a promise to the working class vote that we were going to go and do this economic protectionism in their name, which they have asked for. And now we intend to deliver on that. Now, volatility, like say the weakening dollar. Okay, well, that sounds bad at first glance, but that's great for U.S. exporters. That's very bad for the American family hoping to go to Santorini for a week, but it's very good for U.S. exporters because that's what the dollar trades at as a basket of currencies. So that would help domestic exporters do well. And in addition, all of the goods that Trump has tariffed had a rule when they were on the water by April 2nd, they won't be tariffed. So you're not seeing any short-term fluctuations domestically for the prices. Gasoline is down. Inflation is down. The cost of food is down. That's what Trump voters are seeing. The transnational equity holders, the bond holders, yes, they're involved in it, but there's no crying in the casino. And if and then people who have pensions, for example, well, your pension is intended to be through any volatility. So unless you're cashing out your pension right now in the midst of it all, which would be unwise, you're not being affected. So it is the right strategy. These are the natural symptoms and causes that will come from it, but it's going to be ameliorated by the deals that Donald Trump is making. We see a huge deal today with India, which has caused the markets both to be up in all quadrants. And these other countries coming to the table that are going to supplant China are going to put China farther and farther in a corner where it's backed up to the wall. And right now, I think we're very happy with the administration, how they're doing it, and that's being shown by the support we have at home. Now, if you are a stock guy, if you're a big crypto guy, you've had a pretty tough month, but you've also had a really good year. So you got to zoom out a little bit. Markets are down 7 to 10%.
Right, and pretty much those people have had a pretty good year, decade, season, who knows, largely off the backs of people who live in the Rust Belt. And I think that, would you agree that Trump's kind of priced in that there's obviously going to be turmoil, that certain people are going to miss out, but the people who will benefit, like you're saying, especially when certain businesses end up being onshored again, are those people who voted for Trump, not the sort of, lovey-dovey liberals of the, ruling elite in the markets, the bankers, the people who own all the stocks and the shares. And, actually it's the people on the ground who have seen their manufacturing jobs usurped by countries such as China, who have seen that, everything for them was too much money. And actually a big part of this as well, and correct me if I'm wrong, is going to be essentially about trying to cut down some of that debt to GDP ratio.
Absolutely, that's critical. Right now, we're going to be paying $6 trillion in interest on the national debt. It's not sustainable. $109,000 per American family. I want to stress, in 1970, the middle class in America had the majority of GDP. Today, it's all in the top 20%, and it's all because of real estate and finance. And if you had $1 at the beginning of Joe Biden's presidency, you put it in the market because of inflation, because of inflation-adjusted assets, you have $1.80. But most people put that dollar in the bank, it's worth 80 cents now. If you go by the official inflation rates, not by what you actually felt as a consumer on the very bottom rung, where you were paying 50, 60% more. So I think you hit the nail on the head. We're not here for the big bankers and whatnot. We're happy for them. They're going to win in the long run because we're looking for free trade, which is going to create more investment, more businesses. We're not trying to onshore, by the way, like teddy bear factories in 20th century sweatshops like they're trying to claim we are. We're trying to rehouse the means of production as things become more automated, as AI and robotics become more and more ingrained. Obviously, you're going to have to, stratify how do you tax things, and not having anything to tax in your country is going to be a problem when it comes to that. So the American worker, above all else, is who we're protecting, and the American agriculture. is who we're protecting. And by the way, amusingly, if you tariff American agricultural products on the way out, it makes domestic food cheaper. So that again helps who? The bottom 80% who actually look at their food bills, not the top 20% who say, oh, bananas are a bit more expensive, and then go about their day. So I think that's what we're aiming for. You're right on spot there.
Talk to me about Jerome Powell. I mean, someone who I think might have a little bit of sympathy with what Donald Trump's up against at the moment is our former Prime Minister Liz Truss, who before the mini-budget found that the Bank of England weren't particularly warm about some of her proposals to cut taxes and sold on the cheap government gilts 24 hours before crashing the UK economy and blaming it on her. It seems to me that, you know, in order to sort of enact a sort of wholesome fiscal or economic policy, it would kind of help to have people like the Bank of England, or in the case of Donald Trump, the chairman of the Fed, on side, and yet he doesn't seem to be.
It's very bizarre, and Donald Trump did appoint Jerome Powell, by the way, in his first presidency. So it's a totally different environment now, and the Federal Reserve has long been under scrutiny for its interesting pseudo-governmental role. But you know, it's supposed to play fair, and when inflation goes down, then you lower rates. When inflation is rampant, you raise rates. Any Econ 101 undergrad student understands that. So why is Jerome Powell hesitating, at least? Maybe he will do it eventually, but he's hesitating to cut rates that would help the U.S. Economic structure, and it seems to be bizarre. Now, Donald Trump does not have the authority to fire him because the Federal Reserve is actually not even technically part of the federal government. It's a whole debate. We can go down that line, but I think this is a very hard public pressure attempt to show the American people that, you know, mathematically Jerome Powell is wrong. What you think about him politically, what you think about Trump politically, great. But mathematically he's wrong. And who's that hurting? The first-time home buyers, the people trying to get a car lease, young families. Those are the people who need the rates to come down so they can actually get into a home and get on the American property ladder. Again, something we've promised to the American middle class. Maybe the upper class already has a home and they have already locked in a very nice low rate and they have the assets to negotiate with the bank. But most people come with a minimum down payment and they can't afford the current situation. And that's directly because Jerome Powell refuses to do what's best for the American people.
Why do you think he is refusing to do it?
Well, he's sort of trying to play a very high-level numbers game, is his argument, saying that this will revert into stagflation. It's a mentality of somebody who's not playing to win. I also think that he does have a personal vendetta against Donald Trump. He very much dislikes the fact that we are making all these bilateral agreements. He comes from the school of thought of unilateral globalism. And certainly the fact that we are turning that upside down probably doesn't endear him to us. But he eventually has to realize he works for the American people, and his personal dislike of Donald Trump or his perhaps confusion with modern economics that has passed him by, I think are the reasons why he is being hesitant. But eventually the math is glaringly obvious. Inflation is down. You must cut the rates to cut the pain on American families. And credit cards through the roof. People are living on debt, and that debt is very expensive. Jerome Powell needs to be considerate to them as opposed to perhaps trying to garner the support of Democrats and whatnot so he can get a cushy job, which he will get in some university on the way out, no question.
They always do. They always put out to pasture somewhere pleasant. Let's talk now about Pete Hegseth, the Defence Secretary, because again, he's allegedly shared details, highly classified information, actually detailing planned attacks, this time on Houthi rebels, in a Signal group chat, which involved his wife and his brother. Now, the White House has turned around and said, no, we're fully behind him. We're not going to get rid of him. But the gossip mill is suggesting otherwise. I mean, whatever one thinks about Pete Hegseth and his suitability for the role, you'd kind of think that going, oh, guess what we're going to do next week to your family members, probably isn't that wise.
Yeah, it's not. And it brings up a couple things. Number one, why is the U.S. government, it did under Biden approve using Signal, but that's no excuse. I'm not trying to use that as an excuse. Signal, I mean, there's backdoor access to that at the very high end. It also deletes messages, which is maybe abrogating the Freedom of Information Act. On top of it, that isn't how the U.S. government, Secretary of Defense, should be conducting himself. So I'm the first to say that that's not appropriate. But Pete Hegseth, for a few things, was lucky that none of that was leaked to the enemy. Number two, there was no coordinates. There was no high classified details. It was more of a broad brush sort of almost bragging. Now, with that aside, let me give the other perspective. Just today, we had record recruitment levels in the U.S. Army, breaking the recruitment expectation by 115%. Same in the Navy, same in the Air Force at different percentages. I mean, we have had a dearth of soldiers, people who are willing to join the military because of the last 4 years. And they see Donald Trump's leadership, they see the new Secretary of Defense, and they say, wow, that is a military I want to join. And then Pete Hegseth shows up and he knocks out the Houthis and opens up the Strait of Hormuz. By the way, that was for the international community. We're the fifth largest user of the Strait of Hormuz. Number one is China. Number two is going to be the EU, mainly Germany. So when you look at that, Pete Hegseth being there and his anti-DEI, anti-woke, bringing the army back to some of its more traditional warfighting capabilities is the reason why we broke recruiting numbers. So there's no way we're going to give up this guy. He's a star. He's a number 9 striker, and yeah, he made a couple mistakes, and he should not be using signal, but it's not a fireable offense, and and I guarantee you from my friends in the White House, he will not be fired for this.
Yeah, perhaps he just needs to be told, listen, Pete, the job might be fun, it might be exciting, you might be bursting to share all the cool things you're doing with the missus, but don't. Erol, thank you ever so much for coming on the programme. Fantastic catching up with you and keep us informed about what is going on in Trump's America. Right, we're taking an advert.